Sirens, Slammers, and Service, a podcast for female first responders by female first responders. My name is Nikki Clucci, and I will be your host. As a former correctional officer in Alberta for almost 2 decades and the founder of Blue Line Fitness Testing, which provides law enforcement fitness testing and first responder wellness workshops, I started this podcast as a way for female first responders to share the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of their daily work. I want to showcase the unique perspectives, skill sets, and personalities that women bring to a first responder career and share their stories. So get ready to laugh your ass off, learn a whole bunch, and be inspired by some pretty badass women. Let's go. Welcome back, guys. You guys, today is a fucking lit episode. I have not one, but two female first responders. I'm joined by Kris and Kendra, who are both female wildfire firefighters. Kris did 11 seasons, was based out of McMurray, and was up there for the big fire. And Kendra did 3 seasons. She was also based out of Fort McMurray. These ladies have some tales for you, and I cannot wait for you guys to hear their stories. So welcome, Kris. Welcome, Kendra. How are you, beautiful humans, today?
Good, thank you.
Yeah, really good. How are you?
I'm good, you guys. I'm so excited about this one. I've been bugging Kris for a long time to come on, and she's always been like, I don't want to come on. I'm nervous. And I'm like, just come on and fucking tell your story. Because when I first met Kris, and then I met Kendra through Kris, when she told me that she was a wildfire firefighter, I was like, what the fuck? Like, I wish that I had known in university that this was a job that I could do, because I feel like, with the exception of the fact that it runs exactly over the rugby season, which would have been a big no-go for me. But if I had known, I feel like I 1,000% would have jumped all over this and been like, yes, I'm in. I can't wait to do this. Go flying around in helicopters and like dropping into fire zones. And I'm like, this sounds amazing. And so I wanted you guys on for so long. And then when she said that you were going to join in, Kendra, I was like, this is awesome. And we actually, I have to give a shout out. We had a third amazing female first responders, but unfortunately shift work is a bitch, and she's on nights. So therefore this lovely human is sleeping as she deserves to be. So tell me, so I'll start with you, Kris, how you got into this.
Yeah, so basically my sister is full-time forestry, and she started, took the NATE program and everything, and then she went up to Fort McMurray in 2001 as a dispatcher. So that was my intro to forestry, because kind of what you said, we came from Saskatchewan. Forestry wasn't really a big thing. So I'm even impressed she got into forestry in general, being where we're from. But basically, I always looked up to her. She's 8 years older. So I just thought she was the coolest thing in the world, that she fought fire, and I'd brag about her all the time. So the 1 year, so 2008 was my first year. So she called me up while I was still in college, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do for work. And she said, I have a crazy idea. You should apply for dispatching. So yeah, that's what ultimately got me into the industry.
Very cool. I love that you say that too. Saskatchewan, there's not much forestry. No, there's just flat plain.
It really isn't.
But hey, we're gonna go jump into forestry. That's hilarious. Okay, and then Kendra, how did you get into this? Because you came into this a little bit later than Kris did. So what drew you to wildfire?
Yeah, kind of the same thing. For me, it was a now ex-boyfriend who still works in forestry as well. He was a wildfire firefighter for a couple of years, and I was kind of like, I could do, or I need some kind of summer job. And he was like, well, why don't you apply for fire? Then we won't have to spend our summers apart. So I applied, and he was like, well, you're fit. You could probably do this fitness test. And I was like, okay. And yeah, so I did it. And little did I know, it was probably the funnest job I will ever have had.
Yeah. So I will say both of you are insanely fit. I look at both of you and I'm just like, I would like your body. You guys are amazingly fit and look awesome and are badass. Tell me, because Kris has walked me through a little bit of this fitness test. And obviously with Blue Line, what I do, I've talked to Kris about bringing in the equipment to be able to start to train people and certify people potentially for this fitness test. So I'm assuming you're applying through the government of Alberta, jobs page and stuff like that. And then what happens kind of after you apply? You put your resume in.
So basically, yeah, you would have, I believe, apply online. It might have Yeah, I think that's how I did it. It's been a while, Nikki.
Yeah, you do. So
when I joined a fire crew, it was because I ended up getting voluntold I was doing it because I was initially working in the warehouse that season, but they were short staffed. So, but I do believe it definitely is an online application, and then they sift through all the resumes. And then if they choose you, you get invited to Edmonton to come run the fitness test. And then if you pass that, then the next round comes where they sift through the people who were successful in passing the fitness test, and then they will call you or not call you, depending on if they choose you for an interview. And then from there, that's how you get picked in your district. Every district then kind of decides who they want, and then that's how you get divvied up around the province. Because you do pick, it says in the job application, you can pick your top 3 district choices or anywhere. It just says wherever. So because some people obviously come from certain areas, so they prefer to work there, right? So that's kind of the general rundown of how things go. And then once you go to your district, you again have to pass the fitness test in district in order to maintain your job.
Wow. Oh, I did not realize that. So it's not just a one and done. You're doing it to even be considered to move to the interview phase, which probably gets rid of a lot of people because a lot of people come in, as I find in my business, and then fail out. And so then from there, okay. So, and then running it again in district, is that just to prove again that you didn't just run it and then fall off the gym wagon and get lazy and not fit enough now that you're in your district?
Yeah, I don't know. You know what? That's just kind of always the way it's been. So I guess I've never really inquired into why they do it.
Probably just to hold you accountable, right? Because you could be fit because they hold the fitness test in January.
Yeah.
And then they want to make sure you're still fit come like May or whenever people start, right? March, April, May sort of thing. So, and like that expectation is held throughout the fire season because it's really a safety concern with any of these jobs, right?
And I think that's super smart because there is a lot of people that do that right at the beginning. And depending on the length of the application process, like for you guys, you're talking, 4 months. I've had certain agencies where it takes them almost 2 years to get through, right? And like 2 years, okay, well, you were fit 2 years ago. A lot can happen in 2 years, right? So, okay, so walk me through this fitness test because like I said, Kris, you've told me little bits and pieces of it and we've talked about it. It sounds extremely challenging. It sounds extremely endurance based, totally different than the law enforcement tests that I certify for. But walk me through, what does this test look like?
Yeah, it's definitely endurance. So that's where I know Kendra thrives because that's where our fitness journeys differ very much because I like to say I'm very weak mentally where it's like, I'm tired, but Kendra's like power through. So Kendra always like got insane times on the fitness test where I just went for survival mode.
You were pretty good, I'd say. But yeah, so Kris, do you remember exactly how it went? I know there's a few parts to the fitness test.
Yeah, so you have the total time you have to complete it is 14 minutes and 30 seconds. And it starts off with you put a simulated pump on your back. So that's simulating the Mark III fire pumps we use, which were 65 pounds. And then you have to walk up and over a ramp back and forth 8 times. And the length of the field, how long would you say it probably was, Kendra? Like the length of it? Maybe like
I just looked it up. It says it's 40 meters.
Okay, so 40 meters. So you do that, and then you take the pump off and then walk it around the area for two laps or 4 laps. I think 4. Yeah, 4 laps. And then you drop the pump and then you put on a simulated hose pack, which is 45 pounds. And then you do your 50 up and overs. And then,
which is the equivalent of 1 kilometer is what this is saying. So the hose pack carry would be a 1K walk.
Yeah, which is like, and the ramp's pretty high. Like, so if you're shorter, it's funny to watch tall people do it because like they take 1-2 steps, they're at the top and going over. But I know for me, it would be like 4 steps to get up to the top. So that's always a great time. And then, and then you drop the hose bag after you complete those. And then it's the sled pull, which is to simulate a charged hose. And then I think it's 8 or 8 of those back and forth. I think 4 back and forth. So So it's I never enjoyed it, but the thing is with in district, if you were to fail, you get one more chance to do it 3 days later. And I never wanted to have to do it again. Thankfully, I had never failed it by some miracle, but it's for me, it felt like death the entire time. But
it's definitely like a slow burn at the beginning, and then you're just, once you start going over that ramp a few times, like when you have the hose back on, that's when like the heavy burn really begins. The mental toughness has to come in.
Yes. And what's nice is if you've got people running it, because you want to always ask you kind of initially, I don't know what you, Kendra, but I would start counting in my head. Then I'd be like, no, don't count the laps, right? Because then you're just gonna like wear yourself out being like, oh goodness, I have this many more I have to do, right? But so I always loved when my sister would be running the fitness testing. If you'd get new people in, they'd be like, what lap am I on? And she'd basically be like, don't ask that. You never ask that question. Keep going. Or with me, when I got voluntold I was doing it, she would yell at me and tell me I was failing, even though I wasn't.
I will say, because when I run the fitness test, I'm the opposite. I want to know, and it seems like when I do intervals, when I do like any circuits, that is what is getting me through. Because I will literally be like 64 more, 63 more, 60. Like I will fucking count every single thing down until I get down to the end, right? Because that's what's going to motivate me through. For some of the people that are running, right, like not giving it their all, I will like get a panicked sound in my voice, like as if they're gonna fail. I'm like, you need to move your fucking ass, get moving, get fucking going. And then you can see them like, oh shit, right? And then they go faster because I'm like, you're just fucking half-assing this. Like, and if you continue to half-ass it, you probably will fail. So that's so funny. Yeah, you don't ask that question. You don't want to know.
Yeah, no, she always would lie to me. Like I remember with the old fitness test before they implemented this new one to make it like the same across Canada. I remember doing it in Edmonton, and another sibling and my dad came, and you had to do a 3-mile pack walk with like the hose bag. And every lap I'd come around, she'd be like, you're falling behind. You need to pick your pace up. And then I remember I finished and I was like 3 minutes ahead of the time you needed to get. She's like, yeah, I was lying to you. I just wanted you to keep going.
And then you're like, I want to punch you in the face so bad.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I get it. But then it sucked after that, because every time she'd do it with me, I'd be like, is she lying or being serious right now? So
you're like, I no longer trust you. I no longer trust you.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's funny. Okay. So this does happen. And like, again, 14 minutes, 14:30, you said?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, I mean, not doing anything for 14 minutes, that's a long haul. Like that's a tough slog. So I can definitely see the mental side coming into it, which is good. Because I think that probably very, very much simulates when you're freaking hauling that shit through the bush and not just walking over a ramp, you're doing it in bunker gear. And so you're not like necessarily the most mobile and agile person as you crawl through the bush with all these hose packs and stuff, right? So probably takes a little bit of mental resilience when you're in the field too, to have to kind of dig in and be like embracing the suck.
Yeah. So I always think when I see people at the gym doing farmer carries on the turf, I always think nothing will challenge you more than having to try to carry a jerry can through the bush. Then that should be your farmer's carry.
Oh my gosh, I never even thought about that, because seriously, as somebody with short arms and short legs, that like carrying anything at the side of my body is challenging because it just bumps along the ground. Like, oh, like me, that just is what happens, right? So I can't even imagine adding a jerry can and it's just like dragging through the bush and banging into all these freaking logs, and then you're trying to lift it up and lift yourself over. Like that would be agony. That would be, yeah, that would suck. That would definitely suck. Like, I don't know if I could have embraced the suck.
You tend to remember the better moments for sure, but like, I don't know, Kendra, if there was anything like you weren't. I think the jerry cans were honestly my least favorite thing to have to bring through to the job, but I don't know what you think.
Because like they tried to make things easier. So like obviously a hose pack would be in a backpack, so you could carry it on your back. But jerry cans, there's no way around it. Like you just have to carry it in your hand. If you want to put one and like wrap your arms around it or whatever and have it against your chest, maybe, but yeah, the jerry cans. And you're trying to like rush to get there, right? Like that's the hardest part too, is like you're trying to do it all like pretty quick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's definitely a sense of urgency to get. So you guys finish the fitness test, you go through the interview, you get your district, and you both ended up in Fort McMurray. So there's got to be some training that goes into like this knowledge of, the forestry types, and neither of you came from a forestry background as far as I know. I know, Kris, you didn't, that's not what you were taking in school. And Kendra, were you taking forestry in school, or when you get into this, do they go, Kendra, you said you don't need any previous forestry or.
Okay. So one thing I should have mentioned, like when they're going through the interview process, they do prefer people who are in forestry. Like they definitely give them a little bit of a bump up in the list, right? Because
all the rookies go together to Hinton. And so was it 10 days? Is that how long we spent there? I think.
Yeah, I think it's 10.
Yeah, 10 days. And then you just learn various amounts of fire stuff, like how to do a hose lay, how to like types of fire, and then every morning you have to do physical fitness as a group. Yeah, like classroom training and safety, and like just it's your classic training course, if you will.
There's also like the biggest part about it, I think, is the labs that you do.
Yes.
And then like I think the biggest thing is like fire indices. So like you're looking at relative humidity and like the moisture of the soils and things like that. So you do go through schooling for 10 days. And then they take you through labs to learn how to work the pumps and lay hose and roll hose and things like that.
Very cool. I can't believe it's only 10 days. I would have assumed you guys would have gone like a month or something. Like conservation is 5.5 months of training for them, right? And like, I mean, yes, they have sidearms and carbines and things like this that they're dealing with, but like you guys have a lot of equipment that you have to learn how to use, and like a lot of plant-based stuff that you need to know to be able to actually fight the fire effectively. So I would have assumed it would have been longer than 10 days, but maybe they're just like, we need you out there, out you go, learn while you're out there, go look at the trees while you're sitting at the tower.
Well, I think too, like McMurray is basically a boreal forest. So it's basically OEC2. So probably each district is similar. Like you're not dealing with like a massive difference of fuel types and all that.
And so what happens then when your district, like what's the next stage there? You pass the fitness test again. How many, like, what's your crew? Like how many people are in your crew? How does that kind of work?
So when we were doing it, it depends on your district too. Like, so up north, there's just a lot more bush, a lot less roads. So they've got more initial attack crews. So an initial attack crew, not anymore, but then it was 4 people, right? It's 8 people now, right, Kris?
Yeah, I think they do both.
A little different.
So,
okay.
Yeah. So there's 8 packs now and 4 packs. Yeah.
Yeah, but so either way, initial attack essentially means that's the crew that would get dispatched to a fire like right once it starts. So likely the fire is a lot smaller, right, or hasn't had the chance to grow very much. And then so Kris and I were on a crew one year where it was a 4-man crew, a hack crew that's called it. And then there's also a unit crew, which is a 20-man crew. So they've got 5 crews of 4 people, and each of the 4 people have a sub leader. So we also did a summer together on a unit crew, and those crews will do more sustained action. So they would go to work on certain areas of a larger fire. For example, the 2016 fire in Fort McMurray, because it gets so large, you just go try to put out a fire that has been burning for a long time already. So not likely that the flames are going to be, up on the top of the trees. It's just going to be kind of like a smoldering fire still burning in the ground.
Holy man. I know so little about fire. I didn't even think about that. In my mind, a wildfire is like always flames at the tops of the trees, the whole forest is burning. Like, again, very Hollywood dramatic, right?
Yeah.
Versus dealing with it's coming across the ground, it's catching, dead grass and things like that. Yeah, that you're dealing with. Oh my gosh, yeah. And so, sorry, Kendra, you said 2016 was your first year, right?
No, that was my last year.
Oh, that was your last year. Okay, sorry, because I was thinking, oh my God, sorry, fire, and you went back. I would have been like, you know what? I think I'm good. I think I've hit the pinnacle of my wildfire career. I'm good now.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of funny because so that fire in Fort Mac, it started in early May of 2016, which is early, right? But a lot of fires tend to start around that time of year because nothing has greened up yet. So grasses are still pretty yellow. If you get, in that case, it wasn't a lightning strike. It was, I think, a man-made fire, right? So someone like on a quad, their quad exhaust started the fire is what they say. I shouldn't say too much about that because I don't actually know if they had figured out what started it. Did they? Yeah,
it's all assumption. We just know it's man caused. Yeah, because like before the big guy hit, we were working at least 4 days prior putting out municipality fires, right? So and those were all along quad trails and whatnot. So yeah,
right. It was a busy week to begin with, and then it just went out of control really fast. But my point was that like it was really crazy for the first like month and a half of that season because we had this fire that was going crazy. But then as most wildfires do, they kind of calmed down with the weather patterns, right? So like the rest of the summer ended up being not that busy of a summer. Like it was rainier throughout the summer. So the fire was still burning, but like low lying, smoldering burning. And we were on that sustained action cruise. So we just spent a lot of time like elsewhere, like away from the town itself, like way up north of the town or other places to try to put those edges out. And it was actually a slower season than our season prior to that because we were on the initial attack crew and we had like a ton of little fires to go to. Yeah. So, but I mean, you wouldn't know that unless you worked in the job, right? So
yeah. So you get to your district, you get into your kind of your crew, and they say, "All right, we're based out of where?" So you're in camp. Are you tenting? Are you in bunkhouses? Like, where are you living? What does that look like?
No, so there used to only be one, but now there's 2 fire bases in Fort McMurray. So the original one is about 40 kilometers south of town. And there's basically 2 sleepers with a bunch of rooms on each side. So you're generally double bunked with someone. So you have a roommate, and then obviously there's like wash shacks. We have cooks and like camp attendants who like clean the sleepers on the other buildings. So really good gig because you have all your work trucks out there, and then so that's where you eat and sleep and all that. So and then for daily operations in McMurray anyways, generally you're driving into the warehouse that's out by the airport in Fort McMurray. So someone might be manned up at the camp itself. It's all dependent on hazard of the area. So
then you go into, so you start your day, like what does day-to-day look like? And I'm so you said you were 4 on, 4 off, 4 shifts on, 4 shifts off. Is that how that works?
Oh, no. We're 15 and 6, which if it's busy, it generally goes to 18 and 3.
Well, that's garbage.
and then we're working like, I would say what, Kendra, minimum like 10 to 12 hour days.
Yeah, it would be like a slow day. If it's like super rainy all over the province, the standard day is 7 1/4. But when you're actually working on a fire, you would get 10 to 12 hour days for sure.
Wow. And you're doing 15 of those in a row.
Yeah, you could be. Yeah.
Holy Jesus. That's a lot. Wow.
Yeah. So Kendra is saying it's all weather dependent. So if it's a slow day and you're on a 7 1/4, you're kind of on like a project day. So that's where they kind of can get tasks done, say around camp or around the district that they need done. So that's like, you're waking up. I think that was what, 8 to 4:30,
8 or 8:30 or something like that.
Yeah. And then on man up days, as they're called. So that's where like they're anticipating there could be fire hazard. blah, blah, blah. They base the crews around the district based on that. But because fires will start later as opposed to early, your start time was 10 o'clock normally.
10 o'clock. Yeah. Yeah. So it seems kind of nice because you can like have a little sleep in, or a lot of people would do like a workout in the morning. You know, they'd go do their workout, have their breakfast, and then you start work at 10. It's nice, but that's in anticipation that you might be working until like 10 p.m. that night, right? Because up in Fort Mac in the middle of the summer, the sun's up till 10 or 11, and your helicopter has to be down by whenever
the sun's set. Yeah.
Whenever the sun's down. Yeah.
So you're start your day, you're on a man up day. What does that look like? You're getting up, you're reporting to your truck and then taking airstrip, or you're driving out to your location?
Man up days are the best days because it's either, so it's like usually a later start. Yeah. So what you do is like your crew meets at your truck, and your leader is kind of responsible for like, you know, I guess checking everybody in, but it's like pretty obvious. And then you would likely drive to the warehouse. So our base was about half an hour south of town. So it'd be like a half-hour drive up to the warehouse near the airport. And then you would get assigned a machine or a helicopter, and you'd load all your stuff into the helicopter, and then you would fly out to your tower. So usually you'd get manned up at a fire tower somewhere around the Fort McMurray district, and they would tend to put crews where the indices are looking higher, or where there had been more storm cells seen, or that kind of thing. So, and then you just stay there until, you know, it's time to leave. Like if there's no fires, you'd get sent home around like 5, 6, 7 p.m. depending. And if you get called for a fire, then yeah, you could be working until sundown.
Okay. Wow.
Lots of unpredictability.
Yeah. Well, yeah, totally. And I mean, like, and you're basing it off of weather. Well, maybe there's going to be a fire today, maybe there's not. So when there's not a fire and you're based up at the fire tower, you're again just kind of doing like routine tasks, operational tasks.
No, so if you're on man up, like you have a getaway time. So if a tower or someone was to call in a dispatch to like to get you going to a fire, like you have to be up in the air ready to go in 5 minutes. So you're kind of just hanging around waiting for a call. So it's a lot of crew time. You get to know your crew in these moments, which is nice. And if you jive with your crew, it's great. So like my first season, I was with Kendra on foreman initial attack crew, and like our crew got along really, really well. So it was awesome.
You got that tight knit group. And then if you have a shitty crew, you detest your life, right?
No comment. Yeah.
How can I push these motherfuckers off the tower?
Well, it's kind of cool though too, because I don't think the tower people get enough props at the same time with when it comes to forestry, because there's been some tower people that have been there for over 30 years. And so
some interesting tower people,
and some very interesting tower people that have really interesting lives, like outside of forestry, when you actually get a chance to talk to them. So like the one gentleman at the one tower, he's been in that tower over 35, almost 40 years. And so I remember my sister, we stopped in to visit him because she was on patrol. And he was just watching the sky, and you could tell he was getting antsy. And then she actually said to him, like, do you want to get up into your tower? And he just had like this suspicion, like, yeah, there's going to be a fire. And wouldn't you know, as soon as we got back up in the helicopter, he was calling in a pre-smoke, which means he saw like a lightning strike and saw the fire starting. Some of them are just amazing, and they know their job so well, and they would even give us heads up if we were at their tower. They'd be like, I think something's coming, so like just heads up.
Yeah, be ready. So the helicopter like station, like the one that brings you there, does it just hang out there too, waiting to take you, or does it go back to the airport?
No, the pilot stays with you.
Okay.
You know your pilot pretty well.
Yeah, you get to know your pilot well too.
Sometimes too well. But, yeah.
Did you sleep with the pilot?
Talking wise.
No,
You learn some things about them that you could have done without.
Oh, yeah. That's all I meant by that. It's just very interesting.
Well, like you said, and when you're literally just trapped waiting there with those people, right? Like there's no, it's not like you can go anywhere. It's not like you can like, I'm just gonna dip out. So yeah, you probably do get to know them quite well, all the ins and outs and the intricacies of people. So then you do, so say, yeah, tower says, Kate, there is like early smoke. We can see what's happening. What happens from there? What's your role?
So basically the crew will just naturally start getting ready because the tower calls into the dispatch center. So you can hear all this on the radio. So we already are getting up in the air at this point and heading in toward the direction. So then the dispatch will then officially call the closest crew and dispatches them to the fire. And Kendra, you were a leader, so I'll let you take it away from this point.
Oh, what? Okay. So, are you talking? Yeah, like when you get called to a fire.
Yeah. So then we go towards. Yeah.
Yeah. So essentially, like the pilot will fly towards the coordinates that were called in, and then you have it's called the white note, right? Is that what
initial assessment? Yeah.
the initial assessment, and it's just this white piece of paper, and so there's like, I don't know, like 10 to 15 questions that you have to answer. It's like you're answering questions like, what does the smoke look like? Like, what color is it? Because that could be indicative of what kind of fuel it's burning. You have to answer what kind of forest it's in. So they've got these categories. It's all forestry stuff. But like, for example, you would say C2 for black spruce, because that's the kind of forest that it's in. And generally, black spruce burns, it's a lot more volatile than like an aspen forest, and the trees are a lot closer together, so the likelihood of the wildfire spread is a lot bigger. Like it'll spread a lot easier in a spruce forest. So you're answering things like that. You're answering like, what time is it? You're answering, just all these details about the fire.
Yeah, like what's in the surrounding area, where your water resources, is there anything at risk of burning? Like,
right, is there like a house nearby or a structure?
Yeah, do you need, and then like finally, like, do you need more resources? Do you need the air tankers? So, and so that's another thing, is like, if it's like gonna go, or you see it in this like highly volatile forest like spruce as opposed to aspen, and you'd be like, and you see it burning, or it's the wind is blowing towards, that's another question you have to answer, is like, what direction is the wind coming from, and it's blowing towards a house or one of the towers or something, then you have to call in for help, right? So you call for an air tanker, you call for more crews, and then it just kind of depends. Like sometimes fires are super like not crazy, and it's just this tiny little white smoke that looks like someone is having a campfire in their backyard. Sometimes you can see flames like just bright orange from the top of the helicopter, and you're like, oh my God, it's ripping. Like, we got to freaking get on this. I was never fortunate enough to have to do that. I've only ever done like pretty little ones. So forgive me, mine are a little bit lame, but
not lame.
But you did it. But you did it. So it definitely is, I think, more alert on the job. And that's where like having a good leader comes in handy, because that's who you learn from, right?
So let's go back to, so you see the initial smoke. It's ripping, as Kendra says. It's ripping. You got to get in there. Once you drop down, like, what, besides carrying heavy ass jerry cans, what are you doing when you're getting in there?
So the ticket is to not put yourself where the flame's coming toward. You always want to try to find the closest landing spot that you possibly can. But as you can imagine, in the bush, it's not like you have all these lovely open lease sites or nice openings all the time. So sometimes you could, and then you're also looking for your water source where you can hook your pump into, right? So, or fill your, what we call piss packs. Like those are like the sprayers you wear on, like they're backpacks with water, right? That you have nozzles on, and then you can spray like manually, and then you don't use a pump. So yeah, finding the closest landing source where you're not putting yourself and your crew at risk. And then you have to trek into the fire because the leaders GPS'd it while doing their initial assessment, right? So they will know what direction to go, hopefully. And then, once you hit the fire, you're basically, the premise is you want to contain the perimeter so it can't continue to spread, or if wind direction changed, go a different direction. So you always want to land at the base of the fire or the rear end, and then start hose laying and hose lay the perimeter and attack the perimeter flames to just keep it all in the center.
Yeah, and you kind of like, you make a plan like when you're circling the fire, so you kind of assess the area and you say like, okay, like Kristen, you're going to be on pump setup. So you got to go take the pump and like carry it to the slough that's our water source, right? And then Kendra, you're going to be on hose lay. So you have to like drag out hose around this perimeter because this is the back of the fire. And then you might have another crew member who's like chainsawing. So they've got to take the chainsaw to like cut a path to the fire, because a lot of the time you're just like, there's no way to get there unless you cut some shit down to your way. So
yeah.
And you gotta make your way there.
To go along with what Kendra's saying, it's also a safety thing. Like some crews don't cut paths, but like McMurray, I've only ever seen our crews really do that. And it's a safety thing too. Like if you've got to evac off and you've got a nice cut path, then great, right? So it just it takes longer. It takes a bit more time. It's like prep work for painting, right? Like no one wants to do it, but in the long run, it'll make your life easier in the end.
And safer. Exactly.
And safer. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And so this is only a crew of 4 of you that would be dropping down and doing this unless you're like, whoa, this one's really, really big. Hey, everybody, like we definitely need more people here.
Yep. So if you want like a better, like an example of a bigger fire, say like when we were on the unit crew, like Kendra said, it's a 20 pack split into 5 crews of 4. So that scenario, if you're on a larger fire that started, it's what Kendra said, but on a higher scale. So it's like this crew's in charge of hose lay. This crew is cutting path. So now you've got 20 worker bees splitting up to complete this task on a large front.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then you can, I guess sometimes, like Kendra, correct me if I'm wrong, but sometimes on unit you'd split and you could attack the perimeter from 2 different sides with the sub crews, right? I think that's what we would do.
Oh, definitely. Because generally, like we weren't, like it was kind of rare that we would see flames on a fire, right? Like you'd land on a fire and it would be, you can't even really tell that it's burning, but it is. All it takes is a really hot day for that fire to kind of light up again. So, but on a fire like that, if you've got that many people, of course, like why would you not try to go a couple perimeters so that you can actually get more of it down faster?
We were on a fire in Labiche the once. This was awful. Do you remember this fire, Kendra? And it was, remember that massive walk into it down? It was like all muskeg. And I don't even know how long the walk was to like go back and forth to grab the hose.
I don't know if I remember that.
It was when we had to evac off of. And oh no, maybe you weren't there. Dan was the leader. Oh no, sorry, Kendra, you weren't there that year then. Anyways, this fire was absolute hell. It was like a kilometer walk down this like skeg trail to go get hose bags and haul them back and forth, because you run out of hose really fast when you're laying a perimeter, right? Nikki, do you know what we mean? But when we say that, I explained it to you, I guess.
No.
So basically it's 400 feet, right, Kendra? 100 feet length of hose in a box, I think.
Yeah.
So basically the hose bags are set up with, there's 4 lengths of 100 foot each hose. And then you're just stringing it out along the perimeter so that the people who are then running the hose and like hosing down the fire, they basically will do sections, right? So it'll be folded in half how the hose comes out. So then that way they can join a length and attach the nozzle, right? Then they walk out the next 50 feet because then you leave a 50-foot gap. and then lay the next length of hose. And then when they've established that section, then they attach the next length and then set up and then attach their nozzle, and then it just keeps going.
Okay, cool. So you'd walk out a hose bag and then have to walk back a kilometer to pick up another hose
So like
to
you have
drop it back the next pack.
Or you'd have more people bringing out the hose.
Yes, but sometimes like if the fire's big, in this scenario, the specific one I'm talking about, you run out of hose really fast with how quick you're running through hose bags. So I just remember my leader being like, we need to go back and get more. And I was like, oh God, this is going to be the worst day ever. Because I kept sinking up to like my knees in skeg. And then on top of it, we would try our best to keep the hose out of the wet skeg on any fire you went to in McMurray, because as soon as those bags get wet, they just the hose just sucks up the moisture, right? And they just become so much heavier. So
and then it's hard to bring them back on the helicopter, right? Because you've got weight restrictions on your helicopter. So it just adds another complication to the
to embracing the suck.
That's a big embracing the suck moment.
But that's where all the cardio really comes in, is when you're having to walk like kilometers and kilometers in muskeg, right? It's like, worse than running in sand, like.
Sure. Yeah I can't.
You're disgusting all summer, so you just are sweaty and
your
dirty.
Feet are all like soggy.
Dunlops are your best friend in McMurray. So
like the steel-toed rubber boots.
So you're saying you're looking super sexy as a wildfire firefighter. That's what I'm hearing.
It's particular charm. It does.
I always thought if I met a
glamorous job
while looking like that, then he must like me, because this is when I'm at my absolute worst.
There was a picture of us on a bus one time in our uniforms, like.
After the Fort Mac fire, the diversified buses that run the oil workers to like site and stuff, we got put on the side of a bus. And Kendra would always make fun of me because I always had resting bitch face. So.
Yes, I did. And you do.
That's awesome. Oh my God. So tell me some stories. Tell me, because I've heard a couple. I've heard one where Kris almost died in a helicopter because it got caught. A helicopter like tipped and you guys thought you were going to die. And I've heard a couple other, like just where things have kind of like you were saying, Kendra, like very unexpected challenges that have kind of popped up. So what are some of like the most memorable kind of stories you remember from your time in wildfire?
Oh, I mean, one off the top of my head that I think was pretty cool was so like I said before, you get to know the pilots really well, right? And sometimes we get sent up to Fort Chipewyan, which is on the very western corner of Lake Athabasca, and you get sent up there for a full shift, right? So it'd be 15 days. I remember this one time I like forgot something in Fort McMurray. I don't even remember what it was, but it was like something that I really wanted. And we were up in Fort Chip for the shift. And so this pilot, but he owned his own company. He actually was like, well, I need to go back to Fort McMurray to like do something with his family or something. So he gave me like this personal flight back to Fort McMurray from Fort Chip on a helicopter so that I could go. It was like something stupid. It was like a book. Like, I don't know what it was, but it was awesome. So I like got a private helicopter flight back to Fort Mac for the night, and then I went back to Fort Chip the next day. So like things like that were pretty cool. And then I don't know if you remember when Leonardo DiCaprio did his so he was up in Fort Chip at the same time as us. We were flying with this particular pilot, and he was like, oh, like that's like his pilot on the radio. So we were like, I think he was talking to like Leonardo DiCaprio's pilot at the time. I was like, whoa.
That's pretty cool. I don't think you told me that one.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Oh.
I thought it was cool.
And this same pilot, on one fire we were at in Fort Chip, the Fort Chip fires were the best because they were all on like Canadian Shield, right? So like pretty easy, and it would just become bucket operations. But he actually bucketed a pizza in when we were on a fire.
He brought us, you know, like he was pretty cool sometimes, like just for situations like that, right?
Yeah.
He just did what he wanted. So yeah, he brought us a pizza one time in his bucket, which is like the bucket you dip in a lake, right? To pick up water so that you can dump it on a fire. He just put it in the bucket and like flew it right above us, delivered us a pizza.
So we have pictures of us eating pizza on the fire. There's a lot of really wicked experiences you can get with fire.
What about, what's it called? The TVG? The like rookie shot that everybody has to take?
Oh, I just went through mine up after. But yeah, tequila, vodka, and gin.
All in one shot. So you've got 3 ounces. 1 ounce tequila, 1 ounce vodka, 1 ounce gin. And that would be our rookie initiation into.
Yeah, after I did mine, I remember I looked at everyone and went, I'm going to go outside for a moment. And I was like, do not tell him that I just threw up basically a $30 shot.
Yeah. Well, it's just so nuts because you go from being like completely sober to shit-faced out of your mind within a matter of like 10 seconds.
Oh my gosh, that's funny. So what did you do on days off? Because you don't really have like a ton of time off.
I went back to Edmonton like every time.
Yeah. I would just chill out in McMurray because like I always laugh because I will never claim to be like a super outdoorsy person. And I was kind of, I guess, toward the end of my forestry career, I was definitely feeling the age gap between myself and like the rookies that were coming in and the new people. So I always had to laugh, especially if we were working fires for our whole shift, where people would be like, oh, Kristen, like we're going hiking and we're going to go camping for days off. Like, do you want to come? And I just would always be like, God, no, like that is the last thing I want to do on my days off. Like, I just want to be by myself, or I would go into the city and see my sister. Right. But I personally, I would just stay at camp and just do nothing, especially if we were working like 18 and 3s by that point.
Yeah. You just need the break. You need to just take the downtime. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Kendra, Gab, and I also sometimes we got into American Horror Story, so we would just all gather on my single bed in my bedroom and then lay on it and watch American Horror Story.
It really is a great opportunity for you to make lifelong friends.
Oh yeah. But it's funny because I will remember the first thing I heard about Kendra when she was coming, and it was like, Kendra's jacked. Have you met her yet? And I was like, I got to meet this girl. That's apparently just like ripped. And then I saw her and I was like, yes, she's going to be my friend. Kind of like with you, Nikki, you came across very like, just not, what's the word I can say? Assertive and like, don't fuck with me. And I was like, yes, this bitch is going to be my friend. She just doesn't know it yet.
When you said, Kris is her infamous resting bitch face. When I saw you at rugby practice, I was like, this chick looks like a massive bitch. She's going to be my friend. So funny.
Well, it's the same thing with Gab. That's like, she was so quiet. Like when I first met her, because Gabby came from LaBiche when she transferred to Fort McMurray, like so quiet, super nice. And like, I didn't know what she would think of me. And then she told me later on after we kind of got closer, she's like, yeah, Kristen just says everything I'm thinking. I was like, and that's how we became friends. Because I'm the mouthpiece that will just vocalize everything. So
but Gabby's thinking it. She's thinking it. So yeah, that's good. That's good.
That's what I think.
Okay, well, I've taken a ton of your guys' time. I don't want to take too much more, but I do want to wrap up with a couple rapid fire questions. So the first one, and I've asked every single guest, I love this one. What was your favorite food or snack when you were working on shift? Kristen?
So, I gotta laugh about this. So Kendra reminded me because I completely forgot. I used to love when the campies would make hard-boiled eggs. So I would always take those with mustard packs, and that would be a really good snack.
Where did you put these?
Well, you pack your lunch, right? You always got your lunch packed with you. So
It'd be like in a Ziploc bag. I just remember seeing Kristen and she's just fucking covered in soot, and she's like eating a hard-boiled egg out of a Ziploc bag when like putting mustard on it. I was like, what the fuck? You know, it's healthy.
And Kendra and I loved, Kendra introduced me at the time to Zions energy drinks. So it was like, these were like the little moments we looked forward to during our entire day. Because during a man up day, you had to do a patrol and in the helicopter. And so sometimes it's amazing I don't know if you've been in a helicopter, Nikki, but if you're already kind of tired, if you're sitting in the back seat, you just get like lulled to sleep from the blades ripping around. So we would save our Zions energy drinks to drink whilst on patrol.
Energy drinks, and then tater tots, any of the like leftovers or leftover breakfast. So our leader my leader one time had tater tots in her like little fanny pack. It was always like the weird shit that was the best.
Yeah, the stuff you look forward to. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just little treatses, little snacksies for the road.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Your favorite piece of equipment that you guys got to use?
Chainsaw.
Oh yeah, sawn was good.
I love chainsaw.
I would feel like that would be very clearly draining though, doing that all day, like just chainsaw, especially if you're cutting, like you were saying, like quite a wide strip for, to get into the fire. Like, is that not super tiring, or was it?
It does get tiring, and it's hard on your wrists and your low back and stuff. You just take breaks, or you can switch off. If you get tired, you just get somebody else to do it.
Yeah, because you always have someone following you swamping, right? So, and they're kind of bringing the jerry can and oil with them. So you just, like Kendra said, you're working with someone else, and then you just kind of switch on and off each tank cycle of gas.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's tiring and you get very sweaty, especially wearing chaps.
I could totally see that. That would be super, on top of the gear you're wearing, like adding chaps on top. Was there a piece of equipment that you didn't like using? Like it was like your least favorite?
Anything labor, like shoveling, or like with an axe, or the Pulaski. Like Pulaski is an axe with a hoe on the other side of it. I hated that because you're just basically digging a trench.
You're like, this sucks. This is the suck.
Honestly, like a big part of the job is glorified labor. A lot of the time you're just digging a trench.
Yes. I always tell people that too. Like, it's an absolutely wonderful job. And when shit's hitting the fan, like it's hitting the fan and you're going. But I'll always say, like, it's not what these posters are trying to, or like videos, like, join Alberta wildfire. And then it's got, like all the action going on, like you said, Nikki, earlier, like Hollywood, right? Like what these shows are presenting. And it's like, oh, these people are in for a surprise when they come, right? Like, but again, like there are genuinely moments like that. Like when the Fort Mac fire hit, like you were just like, holy shit. Right. So yeah.
I think that's any first responder career though. Like it's always glorified, right? Police, like, car chase sounds and tactical, like this, and fire, like even just, like municipal firefighters, like, structural fires, big ladder trucks, paramedics, your gunshot wound in the ambulance. Like that's like a small percentage of what we do.
Yeah.
The rest of the job is not like that. Okay. So is there anything that was like particularly challenging in the role that you guys had, just in general as a wildfire firefighter, or like a frustration, or was there something that was more challenging or more frustrating because you were a female in this role?
I don't think so. I don't know. Not as a female, like I honestly never felt sexism, really, if you will, or like any kind of thing like that when I did it. By the time I joined fire, there were a lot more females doing it, because with the new fitness test, I know the old one did knock a lot of girls out with the one section of it, because it was very strength based. So that like our unit crew, when Kendra and I were on unit crew together, like there was 7 females out of 20 people, which was like a great balance for the crew. And all the girls got along really well. So it was, I personally I dealt with like a very minor moment with a specific person where he was basically kind of saying, comparing me to a 6'3", 230-pound guy, saying, well, you need to carry as much as him. And I kind of said, well, yeah, I will, but it's probably going to take me more trips. And it was like, well, no, you should just be able to do what he can. And I'm like, that is like not physically possible. Right. So
yeah,
that was kind of the only thing I really dealt with, because aside from that, like everyone was very supportive and we had great crews that you could trust and rely on. So
I think we were pretty lucky because number one, your sister was the like head of our district. And also, I've been asked this question before, and same, like I've never felt like I was discriminated against. I never felt like somebody thought that I couldn't do the job well just because I was female. Not to say that it probably does happen somewhere in the job, I don't doubt that it does, but I mean, I've heard stories from like people who work fire in the Parks Canada system, but it just depends on the people. And in Fort Mac, we were really lucky. Like there's a lot of young guys there too. And I think generally younger guys, or guys of our generation, think of females a lot more equally than maybe like older boys do, right? So
yeah, that's awesome. I like hearing that too. I think, like you said, you guys both kind of touched on it. It depends on your crew. It really does. It depends on the people that you're working with, their preset biases, things like that, whether or not, they feel females can do this job or cannot do this job, or if they feel like, they have to be exactly equal to what the 6'3" male counterpart would be. So I really like that you guys kind of touched on that.
I was just gonna say another thing too is I felt like people almost respected us because we were up to the task. Like we were willing to do the job, and I felt like we got respect from our male and female counterparts. Like,
yeah, that's awesome. That's so awesome. Okay, I'm gonna wrap up with one final question, or one kind of final thing from you guys. Piece of advice to somebody that's looking to get into this career. What would that piece of advice be?
I think this might sound asshole-ish, and I don't really care if I'm being honest, but I would hope people that are wanting to do it is they're doing it because they are generally interested in the job and not the glorification and title of the job. I feel like if you want to get into this career, you should want to do it because you just genuinely think this job might be a wicked experience, which it is, especially like the money that can potentially be made for a young kid, right? Yeah, I would say you want to do it for the love of the job and not the title of the job.
Yes.
So like you have to like being outside and you have to like working with people.
I would also like to add that Alberta spoils their crews compared to any other province or territory I've been in. So this is literally, in my opinion, the best province you could possibly do this job in. The amount of gear they give you, the amount of like extra bonuses, like we got stand fields that like said Fort McMurray Fire District, like, and those are not cheap. And they gave you those as like a welcome to Fort McMurray gift, right? Like they bought us waterproof bags, which they didn't have for a long time, so that you could keep your personal stuff and your lunches in them. So like, I know it's very rare, but I know my final season, there was a very entitled person on my crew, and I ended up like kind of losing it on him, being like, why do you feel that we owe this to you, or like forestry owes this to you? Because they don't, right? Mm-hmm. So Alberta is like unreal, because I know when we would go to like the Northwest Territories or like the other provinces, they don't have the funding that Alberta forestry did. So you really were like, wow, like we have it so good in Alberta. So it's cool to see the difference in styles between provinces and territories and how different things really are.
That's awesome. Yeah. It again, it is sometimes when you don't know what you that what you have is the best, you can get really entitled. Like,
it was like, I have this expensive rain jacket. Like, why don't they provide us with rain jackets? I'm like, oh my good Lord. Like, you don't, well, one, who's going to buy a super expensive coat to potentially wreck in the bush? Like, go buy a $30 Mark's Work Wearhouse coat.
Yeah.
You're not worried about getting wrecked. But yeah, it's just, long story short, it's a really great province to do this in. So I know they were struggling to find people this year. Like, I was told that the candidates just weren't coming in, which I said, why do you think this is happening? And I was basically told, I feel like people don't really know about this job. And so that really surprised me, because like, I feel like from when I started with forestry up until even when Kendra and I left, there would be hundreds of applicants trying to get into these jobs, but they're still trying to find people. Like,
yeah, well, we will post in the show notes the link and stuff like that. Obviously, wildfire season is in full effect right now, as we all know, living in Alberta right now. So I'm sure that they're not taking any new ones, but if they are, hey, if anybody that's looking to apply, I mean, this would be a great time. They need as much help as they can get. So and start training for fitness obviously is going to be a challenge for many to try and hit up. So I just want to say thank you, ladies, so much for joining me. It has been fun. There has been some good laughs. I love hearing your stories. I love, like I said, again, just totally learning about something I have no whatsoever. And so thank you for taking the time. Thank you for joining me today. Again, sorry to Gab that she couldn't jump in with us, but we'll try and get her on a different episode maybe, and she can give us her kind of perspective on it and the things that she's done and seen. And I know you have your friend Robin. There's some awesome more people coming our way on the podcast, but thank you. Well, that's it for today, folks. Thanks so much for tuning in, listening, giving me your time, your energy, and your attention. I completely appreciate it. Make sure you check out our next episode with another badass female first responder anywhere you get your favorite podcasts. And follow us on Instagram and Facebook at bluelinefitnesstesting.com. I hope you stay safe, keep your head on a swivel, and watch your six.